Okay, tonight we're going to discuss apologetics. Who knows what apologetics means? And I really like this to be, when I try and do something, I like it to be participatory. So, I'm not the only one putting everybody to sleep. You can do it too. Not really. So if you would please, what would your description of apologetics be? Joe, you know. Come on.
The defense of the faith.
Yes. It comes from the Greek word to defend. So apologetics comes from the Greek word apologia, as it says right on the top here, a defense of strongly held beliefs, attitudes, or actions. Christian apologetics is the discipline that deals with a rational defense of the Christian faith. How many of you have ever had a question asked by a non-Christian that you weren't sure how to answer? I certainly have. Okay, the Bible teaches as believers we should love the Lord with all our heart and with all our soul and with all our minds. So sometimes people say, I don't like that apologetics thing. I talk about my life and how my life has changed. And that's apologetics. That's also apologetics. But as far as getting to the rational and reasonable defense of the faith, some people aren't so much on board with that. And I don't know about you, but I don't agree with that. I think it's good to have good reasons to believe things. Right? 1 Peter 3:15 is probably one of the most famous scriptures for the apologetics. Always be ready to make a defense to everyone who asks to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. Now, one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is Proverbs 15:2. And would somebody please turn to Proverbs 15:2? And we'll keep going here, but if you would go there and just read that for me, Proverbs 15:2, especially the first half of the verse. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says we should destroy speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. So when you're defending the faith, you're destroying speculations and lofty things against God, against the knowledge of God. And I don't know about you, I know guys seem to like apologetics more than women for some reason. I think it's because we have this conquering mentality. We like to win the battles. So when we discuss something with someone, we want to win the battle. But there's certain ways I think that works better than others. So if somebody please read Proverbs 15:2. It's one of my favorite places. Yes, Natalie.
The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable, but the mouth of fools spout folly.
Okay, do you read the first part of that verse again, nice and loud?
The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable.
Okay, the tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. In some translations will say the tongue of the wise makes knowledge appealing. So in apologetics, how do you think, how would we do that? How do we make knowledge acceptable or appealing? How do we...
Know your subject.
What's that?
Know your subject.
Know your subject, yeah. If you know your subject, because the Bible said in 1 Peter 3:15, we should do it with gentleness and in reverence. So when we're sharing with people, if we're going to do it in a way so that we make the knowledge acceptable, it's going to be received much nicer. And we've got some conversation starters we're going to look at, but we're going to keep bringing up that a wise tongue. Or we probably could say a wise person makes knowledge acceptable, right? Because the tongue doesn't really do much unless the person tells it what to do. So we can say a wise person makes knowledge acceptable. Okay, so there's a bunch of scriptures here, as we can see, that say that we should be defending a faith. Jude 1:3, contend earnestly for the faith, which was once for all handed down to the saints. Philippians 1:16, knowing that I am put here for the defense of the gospel. 2 Timothy 2:24 and 25, gently instruct those who oppose the faith. And then that nice verse, Proverbs 15:2a, the tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. Would we all say that together? The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. Yeah, that's lovely. And the verse just before that, in verse 1, what does it say? Somebody read that? A soft answer turns away wrath, but a grievous, how's your translation say?
Harsh.
Grievous words.
Stir up anger, right. So a soft answer turns away wrath. So again, right after that it says, the tongue of the wise person makes knowledge acceptable, right? The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. The Bible is clear that there are reasons to believe in creation and in the Bible. And Romans 1:20 talks about that. And many of us know this verse. It talks about in creation, having been his eternal power and divine nature having been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so they are without excuse. In creation, we can see that there's a God. Just in creation, we can see that, right? And then Psalm 19:1-4 basically says the same thing. The heavens proclaim the glory of God. Now, Jesus taught in John 5:39 in using the Bible. So Jesus used apologetics, obviously, right? He says, you search the scriptures for you think in them you have eternal life, and they testify of me. So he's using his mind to say, hey, listen, you're trying to look for the scripture in the scriptures to see that you have eternal life, and that talks about me, because guess what? Through me is when you have eternal life, how you get eternal life. So he used apologetics. Paul used apologetics. Peter used, they all used apologetics. Peter said, but these things which God foretold by the mouth of his prophets that the Christ would suffer, he has fulfilled. So he talks about how the prophets spoke about him, he fulfilled it. And how did the prophets speak about that? Where do we have that recorded? In the Old Testament, right? Through prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. And I know a lot of these things are, pretty much everybody's here. This is kind of like, yeah, okay, you're telling us stuff, you're preaching to the choir over here, you know? And then I didn't really, you don't really know what kind of crowd you're going to get, but it doesn't hurt to review, right? Okay. Matthew 28, 18 through 20 says that we should therefore go and make disciples of all nations. And I was thinking about this, I think, do you think it's possible you could start almost making a disciple before they even get saved? Or you're giving them some equipment, you're giving them some discipleship training before they even get saved? I've got a good friend that's got his doctorate in physics from Cornell, who I mention all the time, and I've been sharing my faith with him for like 3 years, and he is like this close right now. And he can defend the faith. He's unbelievable, because we've been talking for a long time, and he reads a lot. He teaches me things on how to defend the faith, and he's not even a Christian yet. Well, did you think about this? You know, there's no way. He said, I told him about the universe is expanding, he says, because of the Doppler effect. He said, well, they're not sure if it's the Doppler effect, but it is expanding. I mean, he tells me stuff because he's a physics major, whatever, brainiac, and all that kind of good stuff. Anyway, so on the back side of this, the basic format that we're going to use tonight, I'm going to start moving along here. Is there a God, and will the real God please stand up? How many of you remember What's My Line? Is that the name of the program? Yeah. Where they had different people, they said, oh, I'm Joe Jones, I'm Joe Jones, I'm Joe Jones, and you're trying to guess which one is the real Joe Jones. So you say, okay, is there a God, number one, and which one is the real God? Can we prove there is a God? Can we?
Yeah.
Can we prove there is a God? I believe we can. I believe we can. Can you make anybody believe? No. That's in debate about how that happens, but that's up to them. That's not something we can force. A human being cannot force that on somebody. We cannot make somebody believe. We can prove it. Just like I can say, hey, I was in Connecticut today at a car auction, and if you don't want to believe that, I can give witnesses, I can have pictures of me being there, and you can say, hey, you took that last week, those people lied for you, you know, you weren't in Connecticut at work today, you were goofing off somewhere. So if you don't want to believe it, then guess what? You just might not. So is it important that we make a wise tongue makes knowledge acceptable? Yeah, we want to make it acceptable. And I would just ask you to think, while we're going through some of this, if you think of one of your favorite lines or favorite ways of opening up the conversation, a way that you've done to make the knowledge acceptable, how you open it up yourself. Okay, there's different types of apologetics. We're going to blast through this. There's classical apologetics. That's the one we're going to use. It basically says there is a God, and which one is the real God. Now, this evidential apologetics stresses the need for evidence in support of the Christian truth claims, which classical apologetics also does. But classical apologetics uses proofs for God and that miracles are possible. What do you think is the biggest miracle that God ever did? What's that? Yeah, everything out of nothing. You know what? If God had a conversation with a guy Tuesday, and he said to me, well, I don't know about that, blah, 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 I don't know about a virgin birth, and I said, listen, you said you believe God created everything out of nothing, right? Can you make a woman pregnant without her having relations? Yeah, obviously, no problem. I mean, we can't even make our own dirt, so, okay. So evidential apologetics talks about rational evidence, historical evidence, archaeological evidence, experiential apologetics, and prophetic evidence. It's very much like classical apologetics. But then it gets narrowed down a little bit to experiential apologetics. Some people appeal primarily, if not exclusively, to experience as evidence for Christian faith. Their own life, how their life changed, what happened to them. But that, in some cases, can be subjective, especially if we don't have really thought about it ahead of time and had a really good process on how we bring that up and how we communicate that. Historical apologetics stresses historical evidence as a basis for demonstrating truth of Christianity. These apologists believe that the truth of Christianity, including the existence of God, can be proven from historical evidence alone. Okay, do you think that somebody could be a, let's say, prophecy apologist, use prophecy to show, first of all, that there is a God and that Jesus is who he says he is, and make the case right from there? I think he could. He could do that. That's just amazing stuff. When you see the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled and also prophecies before him, like about the prophecies that Daniel made and the prophecies about Cyrus, who's going to come and let the Israelites come back into Jerusalem, all those different things ahead of time, even named them by name, and then they happen. You say, wow, that's amazing stuff. I mean, a regular human being can't do that. Okay, so in world belief systems, again, like I'm just kind of like preaching to the choir, but we'll just blast through these. Atheist believes there is no God at all. Agnostic, not sure if there's a God, or they just don't know. Some say you can't know. What's the problem? Okay, an atheist, first of all, I'm going to jump down a little bit here. An atheist says that there is no God, okay? And what does Ravi say about that? Ravi says that when you say there is no God, it's like saying there's no such thing as any black rock with 6 white spots anywhere in the world. You have to know every rock. 100-foot underground in India, everywhere. You have to know every rock. Can a human being do that? No, we can't. Okay. So can a human being say there is no God by searching the whole universe and beyond and having discernment on every level? No. And I have not had one atheist that I use the technique that Ravi teaches stick with being an atheist. We've had people say, then what am I? You know, and one of them said, his girlfriend said, you're an agnostic. I'm like, oh, she knew that word. I couldn't believe it. Which is really what he was. But some agnostics will say you can't know that if there is a God or not. Well, what they're saying is, I've searched the whole universe and beyond, and I know that you can't know. They can't even do that. All they can say is, duh. You know, I don't know. I don't mean to say that in a demeaning way. They can just say they don't know. Okay. What's that?
You're preaching to the choir. That's okay.
Yeah. A deist. A supreme okay, we know what this is, right? Supreme being that created the universe and kind of let things go. A theist God created all and is above all. And that's us, polytheists. There are many gods. Pantheists, God is in everything. God is in the grass. When you mow your lawn, you cut the grass. You got to be careful. You cut God, you got to be careful. Cut down a tree. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so when somebody says that they're an atheist, in the field of apologetics, there's other ways to deal with this, but my personal favorite way to do it is the way Ravi teaches. You say, you know, you search the whole universe and beyond, and this is what's written down here, and you know there is no God. Can you really do that? I haven't had one person say yes. So, and then the agnostic, same thing. So they don't know. Okay. Then belief system, presuppositional definition, which is what people come into what they believe with certain ideas when they come into what they believe. Pluralism, the belief that every religion is true. Can that be true? Can every religion be true?
No.
Can there be many gods and no God? Can there be? No, they can't all be true. Okay. Relativism claims that there is no criteria. We'll deal with that one later. Exclusivism, that belief that only one religion is true and all the others opposed to it is false. What about that? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Skepticism, the view that absolute knowledge is unattainable. Well, I guess if in order for you to say that, you have absolute knowledge. Because in order to say there's no absolute knowledge, you have absolute knowledge to say there's no absolute knowledge. You must know everything in order to say that. So you just ruin your own statement. Self-stultification, right? Dr. Powell? Intolerance, the view that one religious view is true and all the others opposed to it are false. Do you call that intolerance?
If it's true, it's not intelligent.
It doesn't necessarily be true. What's that? Which thing?
Sounds like logic.
Yeah, exactly. It's logical. It sure makes sense. Narrow-mindedness, the same thing, really. You claim that one is true and whatever opposes it is false. Do we get accused of that? Well, guess what? If somebody believes they're into Baha'i and they believe everything is true, if you don't believe that, you're wrong. So they're narrow-minded. And so are the Muslims. And so everybody. Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, they're all narrow-minded because they say if you don't believe this, you're wrong. Okay? Atheists say there's no God. If we believe there is a God, we're wrong. We get accused of it, everybody says it. Everybody does it. And I think a lot of times we need to point that out to people. You say, you know, you Christians are really narrow-minded. You think Jesus is the only way. Well, you know, the Muslims say that Muhammad's the only way, and Buddhists say Buddha's the only way. He teaches you how to get swallowed up into God. And, you know, all these different religions say the same thing, that there's one way. Except for the ones that say there's many ways. And if you don't believe there's many ways, then you're wrong. Okay, then narrow-minded. Self-stultification. Okay, we'll deal with that one after. Truth, we'll deal with that one after. Law of contradiction, we'll deal with that one after. Okay, some conversations starters. Hey, did you look at that verse at the top of the page? The tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. Some conversation starters and interesting information. How many of you remember Columbo? Remember Columbo? Yeah, he's pretty cool, huh? Just one more question. Just one more thing. I'm thinking I'm walking out the door. Well, many people will say all religions are the same. You ever heard that before? All religions are the same. All religions are the same. Well, this is another thing from Robbie. He says there's 4 major issues that every belief system, not only religion, not only what we call, and there's some debate, we're going to look at that in a minute. What defines religion? We'll look at that in a minute. But every belief system, every religion has to address, every serious belief system anyways, has to address 4 areas. Where do we come from? What's the purpose of life? How do you decide right from wrong? And where are you going when you die? Those are pretty major issues, aren't they? They are major issues. What does Christianity say about where we came from? Created by God. What does it say how we're going when we die? How do we get to know where we're going when we die? Yeah, salvation by trusting in Jesus Christ as our Savior. What do the Muslims say? Yeah, we're created. And when you make the confession that you believe Muhammad's the final prophet, and you have an angel on one side, an angel on the other side, and one's watching your good stuff, the other one's watching the bad stuff, and they're telling you that you might go to heaven, you might not, you don't know. Unless you die in the Holy War, like they said. Unless you die in jihad, you automatically go to heaven. According to them. Is that different? I'd say that's very different. What about Jehovah's Witnesses? What about Mormons? What about... They're very different. Which out of those 4 do you think is the most important? Where we go and when we die, obviously, right? No doubt about it. Okay. How many of you ever heard this? I'm into science. I'm not into religion. People say that, don't they? People like to say that. I had someone say that. He said, I've got to warn you. I'm an atheist. Okay. I'm really nervous. Please forgive me. He said, camera wasn't on. Not really. I said, really, you know, the word atheist comes from 2 Greek words, a which means no and theos, which means God. So if you're saying an atheist, there is no God, you're saying you know there is no God, it's kind of like the 6 spots in the black rock, blah, blah, blah. And I said, so really, you can't really defend that completely, can you? Really simple? I don't care, that's what I'm going to be. Oh, that's really scientific. I didn't say that to him, but we move to the next topic. But that happens. People will choose to be an atheist sometimes no matter what you say with that. Okay, so, but the point that we're going to make here is separation of church and science, so-called. Some people say, if you can't repeat it, it's not science. Ever heard that before? Or even that type of logic? That's what they'll say. If you can't repeat it, or if you can't look at something empirically and do it empirically. If you turn water up to, what's the boiling temperature of water? 212. So if you turn the water up to 212, it starts to boil. Okay, you can repeat that over and over and over and over and over again. But that water could boil, and you can empty the pan, and the house could catch on fire and burn the house down, and you're not home, and the house burns down. I forgot to shut this door off. The house burned down. Are you going to go burn down another house so you can see how it happened? No. You're going to go in there and you're going to check out how it happened. Through, in a sense, you're investing history. You say, well, you put the pieces together and you figure out what happened. Okay? And so that's another part of science. It's namely called forensic science. Like you investigate a crime scene. Was this by accident? Did somebody plan this? Or did somebody shoot themselves? You know, out of those different things. What happened here? So do you think that we could look at our universe and us and say, are we an accident? Did somebody design us? Happened by chance, which would be an accident. You think we could look at things and decide that? I think it's very logical and scientific to do that. But you know what you hear when you do that? That's not science. That's religion. Well, like a lot of good scientists that are Christians and some that are non-Christians will say, well, I believe we do good science, and where it leads us, it leads us. If it leads us to show that we were designed, then it leads us to show that we were designed. If there is a true God, supernatural God, how would he make himself known? Okay, I'm sorry, one before that, foundation for decision making. We're talking about conversation starters here, and I used to fly a lot, and I flew so much. Southwest Air gave me a free ticket, so if somebody I wanted to fly with me flew for free, you know, whatever, I used to fly a lot. Not as far as you go, Joe, but I flew a lot. But in any case, doesn't really mean anything. I used to sit on planes, and people talk about sharing their faith on planes all the time because it's a really good place to do it. Well, a lot of times I'd be on a plane and somebody would be reading a book and I'd be reading the Bible and they'd say, "What's that you're reading?" I'd say to them, "What are you reading?" They say, "That's not the Bible you're reading, is it?" I said, "Yeah, it is." He said, "You know what's interesting?" I said, "What's that, kid, right there?" I said, "Why don't I ask you a question because I'm really interested in this." Like, oh, I'm really interested. This is very interesting to me. Very interesting. How are you teaching your kids how to make decisions? Because it's really, you know, I just like to hear what people say because people need to learn how to make good decisions. What my mother taught me, what my mother and father taught me. Okay, very good, very good. Now, where do you think they got it from? Because, you know, you have to see, what's that? Yeah, your grandfather. Okay, all right. You say, well, you know what? I think, you know, I like to make my decisions based on the Bible. That's what I do. And then we look at a couple of different things in the Bible, and they say, hey, remember that guy David Koresh? Most of the people are old enough that I fly, you know, next to don't remember David Koresh. He said he was Jesus. I mean, how would we know if he's Jesus or not if you making the decisions based on the Bible? I said, well, this is what I look at. I look at Acts 1:8 where it says that, in Acts 1, not 8, Acts 1:8, but it's in Acts 1, where it says that when he comes back, he's going to come back in the clouds. David Koresh didn't come in the clouds, okay? He said when he was in the clouds, he didn't come in the clouds, okay? So, and that's not the only place in Luke, the end of Luke, in Matthew 24, it talks about when Jesus comes back, he's going to come in the clouds. So I say, gee, that's really, you know, it's really interesting to me, and I think that's a really good way to make decisions. What about different things like, should I steal? Well, that's in the Ten Commandments, you shouldn't steal. Oh, yeah, that's right, it's in the Bible, you know that, right? No. What about thou shalt not lie? Well, yeah, that's in the Bible too. Yeah, okay. So I really think the most important thing a parent can do is to help their kids make decisions by making a connection with God first, and then making a decision based on the Bible. Obviously, we know this, but in talking to somebody, I found that to be an excellent way to open the conversation with someone. Okay, if there is a true supernatural God, how will we make himself known? Okay, so you can ask somebody, hey, you believe in God? I don't know. If he was going to make himself known, how do you think he'd make himself known? How do you think he'd make himself known? Through something supernatural, right? Something that a regular human couldn't do. So what happened with Korah? There's a couple examples here. Korah and Moses, remember that story? In Numbers? Basically, Moses said, okay, Korah, you say that God really doesn't talk to me and I'm not really his man and everything. I said, you guys stand over here and I'm going to stand over here. And if you die a natural death, hey, I'm not connected with God. But if God swallows you up and the ground opens up, then we know who's the real God. And we know what happened. Boom, gone. So we said, well, I guess there's no question there. There's a supernatural happening. I don't think Moses used a shovel to bury these guys. The ground opened up. So supernatural, in a supernatural way. Okay, another thing, people are really into DNA and those types of things, which we're going to get into that a little bit later. But these are just some facts here. There's 3 billion units of DNA in a single human cell. That's a lot. Just to say that a single letter A, C, T, or G, 1 per second, identifying our own cell's DNA would take 95 years, and there are trillions of cells in the human body. There's 137 light-sensitive cells in each human eye. There are 20 million volumes of genetic information in the brain. We're pretty complex, you know. Okay. What is truth? Is there a God? And there's some evidence we can explore. Now, I apologize to people that have come to the True You because some of these things are a little bit of review. Not that the stuff that we did just now wasn't. But, okay, on this journey, we're planning to explore and question what people believe is truth and how you can know the truth about God. We hope this will be valuable and thought-provoking for you. What is truth? Is there a God? Is there some evidence we can explore? What is truth? The Bible chronicles an interesting conversation. Will somebody read this, John 18:37-38? Paul, will you read that for me?
Pilate said, "So you are a king?" Jesus responded, "You say I am a king. Actually, I was born and came into the world to testify to the truth. All who love the truth recognize that what I say is true." What is truth? Pilate asked.
That's a good question, huh? What is truth? Now, we wrote down the answers here to what I've been taught, and if somebody had asked me in the True You class, Bobby said what Aristotle, I think it was Aristotle, says what truth is, and I didn't know that Aristotle said that, but I don't know what I would have given for an answer unless I heard somebody else say it. So truth is telling it the way it is. Truth is what corresponds to reality, right? Does that sound like a good definition of truth? Okay, when someone says, and these are contradictions, what many of us have heard, when someone says there's no such thing as absolute truth, aren't they saying it's absolutely true, there's no such absolute truth? Yes. What do you think about that statement? Defeats itself, it's contradictory. You should doubt everything. Hey Neil, do you know you should doubt everything?
No.
Yeah, you should doubt everything. You should even doubt what I told you, they should doubt everything. You shouldn't even doubt everything. Okay, no one should tell you what to do. Alan, don't let anybody tell you what to do. Except for me, I just told you what to do. No statements are meaningful. Natalie, watch out. No statements are meaningful. Even the one I just said, it's not meaningful. So as we know, these things contradict themselves, but we let people slide on these things. You should doubt everything. There's no such thing as absolute truth. Everything is relative. What's meant by everything here? If everything is relative, then that's not true for everybody, because everything is relative. So the statement's contradictory. Okay, do you see these contradictions? These are known as self-defeating or self-refuting, and the principle is known as self-stultification. Why do we bring that up in apologetics? Because that happens. People say that, oh, that's true for you. That's true for you, Mr. Christian boy. Good for you. Very nice. I'm happy for you. It's been stated that any attempt to refute that there is truth has to use the truth to refute it. It's unavoidable. An example is, there is no such thing as truth. When somebody says there is no such thing as truth, Natalie, when someone says there is no such thing as truth, what do you think? Yeah. Why do you think they're wrong? Yeah. They're saying it's true that there's no such thing as truth. So they're contradicting themselves. Right. They're killing their own statement. So any statement attempting to refute truth is making a truth statement. Okay? So when somebody says there's no such thing as truth, they're done. It's self-defeating like the other previous statements. Okay, the law of non-contradiction. When someone states that's true for you and this is true for me, and they're stating opposing beliefs, do you think they're making a rational, coherent, truthful statement? Can we just talk about this for a second, please? Or longer than a second. When someone states that's true for you, that's true for you. You believe in God, that's true for you. This is true for me. There's no God. What are they saying?
Truth is relative.
Yeah, okay, they're saying the truth is relative. What else are they saying? Actually, really, what are they saying? And you know, sometimes when you're up in front and you're asking a question, you're looking for a specific answer, and you can give 10 answers and they're all right, but you're looking for one answer. They're saying, I believe there is no God. And they're saying, you believe there is a God. It's not one, they're both true. They can't both be true. That's true for you. No, what you're saying is you believe it as true. It's not necessarily true. And it's just like, well, when we say we believe in God, we know it's true. But that's another story. Okay, a woman can't both be pregnant and not pregnant at the same time. The law of non-contradiction logically concludes that atheism, belief that there's no God, and theism can't both be true. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next page because you guys know all that stuff. Some people say they're not into religion. How would you define the word religion? Please don't read the paper. Look up. Please, everybody, look up. How would you define religion? Okay. Okay, what you believe in? Okay. You drank some cold water and you said, this water's cold. You believe the water's cold. Is that religion? No. Okay. A little deeper than that. That's what we'll say, right? It's a little deeper than that. A little deeper. What would you call religion? How would you say? I'll give you a little hint on this. In 1961, the Supreme Court declared humanism, which is basically atheism, a religion. So if we use that, we'd say, okay, now what is religion? I thought it was something to do with belief in God.
A belief system based in faith.
Okay. All right.
Where we come from and where we're going to.
Yeah, it's like goes to your first page.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's good. Everybody's saying pretty much what's right, but we're getting better with the definition as we go along here. So it's a belief system. Let's look at this. Okay. We'll look at the four. These are actually gotten from a dictionary. The first three here: an interest, a belief, or an activity that is very important to a person or group. And some of the examples in there were, hey, in my town, high school football is religion. In Canada, hockey is religion. For those people, chocolate is religion. For me, chocolate is religion.
That's actually a dictionary.
What's that? Yeah, it was in a dictionary, not chocolate. The other one. No. That was my foolish idea.
That's an exaggeration for the purpose of making an exaggeration.
It makes it a little less deep, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Okay, a cause, principle, or system of beliefs held to with devotion and faith. I mean, that's getting a little better. A specific fundamental set of beliefs and practices generally agreed upon by a number of persons or sects. I mean, that doesn't have to be anything deep. The Christian religion or the Buddhist religion. So they give examples that are better there. Okay. Now, the last one. Okay, this a body of persons adhering to a particular set of beliefs and practices. And then the last one, a belief system that deals with ultimate questions. Where do we come from? What's the purpose of life? How do we determine right from wrong? Where are we going when we die? Okay? So which one out of those do you think that you would like out of those? If we're going to say the Supreme Court was right in 1961, which, as we know, they're not always right, but if we say that they were right in 1961, which one, the last one is probably more in line, right? It's a belief system that deals with ultimates. Where do we come from? Where are we going? So when somebody says to me, hey, you know what? It's people say this that teach you how to share your faith, and I've admitted that I forget this constantly. When they say to you, hey, you know, I'm not into religion. Sorry, I'm not into religion. Let me ask you a question. What do you mean by religion? What do you mean by religion? Yeah, how would you define, because I've heard different definitions of the word religion. How would you describe religion? Belief in God. Okay, you say it's good. Religion's only, did you know that in 1961 the Supreme Court declared humanism, which is atheistic, a religion? No, I didn't know that. Well, if that's true, then how would you define religion? And then we try to get them to say, okay, you have a belief system that deals with ultimates. And if you don't, you should have one. Everybody should have one. I mean, it's a serious thing. What's more serious than that? Knowing where we're going when we die. What's the purpose of life? Determine right from wrong. Where do we come from? Those are from, and to me, religion is almost like an ultimate belief system. And I think that if we got that described more like that, then in schools, you'd be able to teach more. Because there are different things, as we know, that are purported as religion. As far as I'm concerned, evolution is a lot like religion. You know, if they don't want to believe in God, then Dawkins says it himself. Well, I'm willing to admit this, although most people in my place wouldn't admit what I admit. Evolution's kind of maybe be more of a firm atheist. Okay, so some people make the proclamation you just have to have faith. You just have to. Have you ever heard that before? It's that faith thing. You know, you're a Christian, but I know you took a blind leap off a cliff. You did. A man once stated, why can't someone give me reasons to faith? How would you define the word faith? How would you define the word faith without looking at the faith? Okay, we're going to do that. Faith. Okay. Do we have faith that this floor is going to hold us up? And if I take a step over here, this green tile is not just a picture of a green tile and it's going to hold me up? Do I know absolutely, positively, without a doubt, 100% that this is going to hold me up? No. We might have an earthquake. We might. So, I have faith. It's good, solid faith. There's good reasons to believe in it. But there's certain things. You sat in the chair because you believed the chair was going to hold you up. You have faith in that chair. Right? Does it make sense to have good reasons to put faith in things? Absolutely. Christianity, as we know, is not blind faith. But we get accused of that all the time. That there aren't really reasons to believe that. So sometimes when somebody says, oh, you know, that's that faith thing. Hey, what if I ask you a question? What am I going to say? Yeah. What do you mean by faith? What do you mean by faith? Would you drive your car down the road if your brakes were really questionable if there were a bunch of kids playing in the street? Probably not. Because you'd be afraid. You'd be afraid. If you didn't have faith in your brakes, you'd be afraid you might run them over. So there's good reasons to put faith in things. Dr. Noam Geisler said the unexamined faith is not worth believing. We believe that it makes good sense, common sense to put faith in God. Do you agree? No doubt. It does. Okay, some people say that they're into science, they don't believe in God. You ever heard that before? What do you think of that line of reasoning? What do you think of that line of reasoning? People say that they're into science, they don't believe in God. Have you ever heard that before? I know we discussed that before. What do you think of that line of reasoning? Mutually exclusive, or how do you want to say it? Right.
They haven't thought very far.
Okay.
A good right question would be, what did you learn in science that would prove to you there is no God?
Yeah, that's a good one.
question. Now that you're a scientist, why don't you do it?
Evolution.
That proves there is no God.
Yeah, don't need it.
But we know that Francis Collins and Ken Miller and a ton of evolutionists believe in God.
The theistic evolutionists, yes.
Well, where did we get evolution?
What's that?
Where where did we get evolution?
Yeah, good point. Well, they will say that, well, that's another rabbit hole, let's not talk about that. So, how about this? Might be a crazy question. What do we say if somebody says, I don't believe in God, I'm into science? What might we say to them? Natalie, what would you say about faith? How would you define the word science? How would you define the word science?
Faith from the natural.
Faith of the natural? Okay.
That's science. That's their use of the word science. It's,
Right.
It's a faith
Right.
in totally natural products.
Right. But just in general, science is
A system of figuring out how the world really works.
right. System of how the world works. It's the methodology how you find this out, and it's what the accumulated knowledge of what you find out. So it's the methodology of how to figure it out, and it's what you found out when you did figure out how to find it out. Okay, so you say, okay, and this chair have a designer. Does that chair have a designer? Does that chair have a designer? Yeah. How do you know that? You ever seen the guy that made it? You ever talked to the guy that made it? You ever heard from the guy that made it?
Looks like Apple design.
Okay. All right. Why? It's too, what? I mean, if it was just a blob of plastic there, you might say, well, it's plastic. Yeah, somebody probably did. But if it was just a pile of dirt, would you say that had a designer? We would, because we're Christians. We would say God made the dirt. But would somebody who's into natural causes say that somebody made the dirt? Not necessarily. No. So, with science, okay, the science of the study of physical and metaphysical, which are non-physical things, because there's actually a science of philosophy. There's a science of archaeology. There's a lot of different fields in science. And history of the universe, including the procedures and knowledge gained through honest evaluation of facts observed. What's the key word there? One of the key words.
Honest.
Honest, yes. Yeah. Methodological naturalism. I know Dr. Powell has heard that before, and I have too. Methodological naturalism. Could you explain what that is, Dr. Powell? Methodological naturalism.
I would ask, what does that mean to it? No. It means the belief that everything in the universe can be explained by natural processes, that there's no need for reference to intelligence or miracles or God or anything.
That's what Joe was saying. Faith in science. Faith in the natural. No matter what, it's a natural cause.
Well, no, 100 years ago you could have faith in science, but that did not exclude belief in God.
Right.
Natural, say it again, methodological
naturalism.
belief rules out no God, no
You methodically say it's only natural causes no matter what comes in. That's what it is. Okay. Now we're trying to focus on usable information, and some of the stuff we've been talking about isn't much usable, so we're going to try it. Using what we have learned in the science of forensics, detectives will investigate a possible crime scene to determine what happened. Was it an accident, a suicide, a murder? They search for fingerprints, DNA samples, and other physical evidence. In a sense, they're trying to determine if there was a design behind what happened. Now, people love to talk about DNA, and they love to talk about CSI and that kind of thing. So when you say to them, you know, what do the people that specialize, CSI, that specialize in forensics do? They go into a crime scene and they try and piece it back together again. Okay, right. We believe that in the same way, through the use of modern science, especially in archaeology, microbiology, and cosmology, which is the study of the universe, we can reasonably determine that if we in our universe were designed or came about by chance. Do you think this is possible and makes sense? We do. Or do you think a lot of people will say that they think that it makes sense? Some people will say no, but some people will say yes. Now, a lot of times in the universities, they'll accuse us of saying, well, that's, you know, you're talking about intelligent design and that's religion. That's like just trying to dismiss it without even approaching it, honestly and realistically. Okay. All right, let's look at these two beautiful pictures we have here. Do you think it would be logical, rational, and reasonable to conclude that old man on the mountain could come about by chance, in a natural sense? It fell down, right, in 2003? Whatever, it's not there anymore. Yeah. Do you think it could have happened by chance? We pretty much agree, yeah. It could have happened by chance, right? Profile Rock is in Freetown.
Except when it consists of pattern. You have to figure out how it happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we agree. We're Christians, so we say, nah, it didn't happen by accident. Because none of it could have. Because you can't make your own dirt, okay? What about Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills of South Dakota? What do you think that could happen by chance?
Wind erosion.
Yeah, not going to happen. Not going to happen. Okay. Let's look at the next page, page 3, the top here, okay. How many billions of years do you think it would take for this wooden chair to come together by itself by chance? Not going to happen. Right? Not going to happen. What about the vehicle? Of course, the chair's not going to move, and the vehicle's not going to move. Please read the following verses from the New Testament Bible. Somebody read that for us, please.
They know the truth about God because He has made it obvious to them. For ever since the world was created, people have seen the earth and sky. From everything God made, they can clearly see His invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature, so they have no excuse for not knowing God.
What do you think the Bible means in those two verses? Now, I know we read this verse previous too, but we're reading it here again. What does that say?
You get a proof and they just choose to deny it.
Yeah, nature, you can see it, so they're without excuse. I personally believe that in the age that we live in, there is more evidence for God than ever in science, than ever, that what's been discovered in the last 100 years, in the last 30 years. I was talking to my buddy who's a physics guy from Cornell, and we're talking about microbiology and DNA and that kind of thing, and I said, hey man, I don't remember this from high school. He said, they didn't know this in high school. We were in high school, okay? It was a few years ago. I said, oh, okay, that's right. Crick discovered in DNA in the 50s, which I would have known it then, but because I went to high school after that, a little bit after that. But, right. But, so you say, okay, in science today, when you look at things that are being discovered, and along with archaeology, these different things that come up, you say, please, you're going to not want to believe if you don't look. And I know we can discuss that too. Okay, evidence for a designer and our universe and us. We believe that it's possible that good scientific reason to read our universe at the beginning of design. Do you think this is possible? We will investigate some of the possible evidence in this section. Okay, scientists have determined that our sun is burning out. You heard that before?
Yeah.
The sun is burning out. It could not have been there forever, or it would have burned out already. Agreed? Right? Could have been there forever, it would have burned out already. Okay, so it had a starting point. Our universe has many examples of fine-tuning that without these we could not live on this planet. That's what is known as the anthropic principle. British astrophysicist Fred Hoyle, late in his career, stated common sense interpretation of the data suggests that the super-intellect is monkey with physics as well as chemistry and biology, and there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The number one calculates from the facts seem to be so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond a question. The size of our moon, the distance from our sun, the speed of expansion, the tilt of the Earth on its rotating axis, gravitational pull, Jupiter acting as a cosmic vacuum cleaner. What does that mean, Jupiter acting as a cosmic vacuum cleaner? Mr. Astronomer.
This is amazing. No, I was just thinking, do you know where this quote came from?
Yeah, Fred Hoyle.
But I mean, you could probably Google that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Bill Gates.
He said a lot more than that, but that's one of the things that he said. He said, the people that don't believe in God have gone up the hill, and this is the last paraphrase, have gone up the hill to discover all these things. And they got to the top of the hill, and they find out, they discover that all these things coming together wouldn't by coincidence, and they find out there's a bunch of theologians that are at the top of the hill they've been waiting for. That's kind of a
I
paraphrase.
thought that was Robert.
Oh, it was
Jack
Jastrow.
Straw.
You're right, that was Jastrow, yeah.
Okay, Fred Hoyle, that would have been Stephen Hawking's teacher or advisor if he wasn't too busy. So instead he got this other guy named Scamp, and they went the black hole route. But I think that's just great. I have to save that for my astronomy club sometime.
Okay, it's been stated, okay, what does it mean by a cosmic vacuum cleaner, Dr. Powell? Jupiter's a cosmic vacuum cleaner.
You know, I never understood that because supposedly things that come around Jupiter, like if this was Jupiter and a comet was coming straight for Earth, Jupiter would grab it and fling it off in a different direction. Is that what it is?
I think
Well,
it's the asteroid belt.
Because Jupiter is so big,
Hold on, what?
The asteroid belt, I think, because of the Jupiter's constantly going around the sun, so the attraction there pulls everything into an orbit around the same orbit as Jupiter, I think. The gravity. That's why you get the
there's
asteroid
a
belt.
gravitational pull
So
of
it stops
Jupiter.
the asteroids from coming in? Is that what you mean?
The gravitational, let's move on. The gravitational pull of Jupiter is much stronger than the Earth, so it draws, it's like having a little magnet and a big magnet, and you've got a piece of metal. Which one's going to pull the piece of metal? The big magnet.
Between
Mars and
Jupiter and the
Okay,
sun.
it has been stated to believe that our universe came together by chance, it's like believing Webster's Unabridged Dictionary resulted from an explosion in the Big Picture. Okay. And then in 1965, Penzias and Wilson discovered a radiation echo for a big explosion Fred Hubble discovered in the early 20th century the universe is expanding. By reversing the process, would not come back to a single point but to nothing. Einstein looked through the telescope and Hubble invited him and made the famous statement, I now see the necessity of the beginning. I think that's a valid statement. People haven't studied these types of things. I think it is. Would you agree with Einstein? That's a loaded question. Maybe, maybe not. Depends on what topic, right? The previous evidence is true. Do you think our universe had a beginning?
Yeah.
Right? Our universe had a beginning. If yes, this infers the following. Everything that begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe must have a cause. Does that make sense? That's a pretty much causation process there. Everything begins to exist must have a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. Okay. So there's two alternatives to the above conclusion. Something caused it, or nothing caused it. What makes more sense?
Something.
Yeah, something caused it, right? I mean, how can nothing cause nothing? You have to exist in order to cause something. So if you already exist, you can't cause yourself because you already exist. Okay. 4. Now this is going to play a little video here. Is that going to turn on?
I think so.
This time,
You have faith in it?
Because I see it coming on, I do. Okay. Right. Thank you, Joe. This looks like a really weird picture, doesn't it? This? It is a really weird picture. How many of you heard of DNA? You've all already heard of DNA, right? Okay. DNA is what's called a double helix. Okay? It's like a ladder that's twists. And what happened, we're going to watch a video, and then we're going to talk about this. Because when you talk to people about DNA and about this, I was actually talking to a guy in Connecticut at the car auction about this. I actually showed him the paper, and we were looking at it, and he said, man, wow, where did that come from? He said, you didn't take that at school, did you? I said, no, I didn't know a lot of this stuff at school. But in any case, but he was just like, he was amazed that DNA works that way and it's that complex.
Correctly, you're going to get a protein from it. I think that has that's something we're going to be looking at real closely. In the meantime, I want us to get a real clear picture of this sequence hypothesis of an airplane. All that's controlled by digital code. That's what Crick was proposing about the cell, and that's what we now know to be true about it. Let's look at a little piece of animation that shows exactly how this plays out. What we're going to see is how the information in DNA directs the synthesis or construction of proteins.
In 1957, Francis Crick first proposed that chemicals, called bases along the spine of the DNA molecule, function as alphabetic characters in a written language, or digital characters in machine code. This short animation shows how this digital information directs protein synthesis. First, a large protein complex separates the tightly wound strands of the DNA to prepare it to be copied. During this process...
I'm going to pause this a couple times. Okay. So the DNA, which is in the picture in the red over here, gets unwrapped by this yellow thing, which is a protein complex. And it unwraps the DNA, okay? And then it copies it, called transcription, okay? It copies it.
As a transcription, a protein complex called a polymerase produces a single-stranded copy of the original instructions. Here we see this copy, a messenger RNA molecule being constructed inside the polymerase. Now we see the polymerase in action from the outside as it spits out the messenger RNA transcript.
Okay, so what is this messenger RNA transcript? Yes, it's a copy of the DNA. So it's copied the DNA now, and now it's going to travel.
Next, this RNA transcript approaches and passes through a molecular machine called the nuclear pore complex, an information recognition device that controls the flow of information in and out of the cell's nucleus. Now we see the genetic assembly instructions approaching and arriving at a two-part chemical factory called a ribosome, the site of protein synthesis.
The word ribosome before, we read that before, maybe if I always yeah. So synthesis just means construction. Okay, so when they say protein synthesis, use a lot of these big words that don't mean like we use a different word to make it what we do. But okay, so we'll play some more. So it's the protein synthesis. Proteins are being made. Proteins are what perform functions in our cells. They do the work inside our cells. And the proteins are made out of amino acids. If you're a weightlifter, sometimes you take in amino acids to help you get bigger, I guess. I don't know. Anybody think they're weightlifting? This is what I've been told. But in any case, so the amino acids are being organized right now in the bottom, the brown things on the bottom there. They're being put together by the directions that came from the DNA that were copied in that polymerase. They were copied, spit out, and this pore opened up exactly at the right time in the center of the cell, the nucleus of the cell, so that transcript can go out. And now these messenger RNA, RNA transfer molecules are delivering these amino acids over there now. Unbelievable. We are fearfully and wonderfully made.
As the messenger RNA transcript passes through the ribosome, the process of translation ensues. During translation, a mechanical assembly line builds a specifically sequenced chain of amino acids in accord with the instructions on the transcript. These amino acids are transported from other parts of the cells by molecules called transfer RNAs, which link specific sequences of bases to corresponding amino acids. Sequential arrangement of the amino acid determines the type of protein constructed. When the construction of the chain is complete, it is often transported to a barrel-shaped machine.
So, as they said, the type of protein that is put together is determined by the arrangement of the amino acids. Okay? There's 20 different amino acids that are used for life to make proteins in our bodies. There's 20 different amino acids. So, at each location, the smallest protein has about 100. Most of them are 400 or more of proteins in our bodies. So, at each location, if it happened randomly, it would have to be 1 out of 20, 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 100 times, okay? But that's a very small protein. For more complex protein, it'd have to be 1 out of 20, 1 out of 20, 700 times. So once you get through this, we're going to look at the math of this afterwards. Hopefully it doesn't put too many people to sleep. But we'll look at the math of this and to see if you think this could happen by chance.
That helps fold it into the precise shape required to perform its function. After the chain is folded into a protein, it is released into the outer cytoplasm to do its job in the cell.
We have cells, the smallest unit of life. We've got trillions of them in our bodies, and these processes are taking place at phenomenally rapid rates every second, right now as we speak. Okay? The transcribing or copying of the genetic message, the translation of it into a protein, and then the folding of the protein so it can go do its job. Yeah, Nathan.
And we know.
Crazy stuff, huh? Unbelievable. And this is stuff that's been discovered because the Human Genome Project went on about 10 years ago. A lot of these things are being discovered, even more things are being discovered now. This is what's that? It takes a minimum of 150 proteins to have a living organism. And that's one that is like a leech. It goes on another body to get life. Usually it's 250. You have to have like 250 proteins for a minimally functional organism. You have to have 250. That's what scientists have determined. A lot of these things they're not sure about. They even say in the DNA, they're not sure if our body plan, the way we are, is in DNA. It may be in something else. And they talk a lot about the junk DNA there, that's from evolution, where they're finding that the things that they thought were junk DNA aren't junk DNA. And it's complete would function. But in any case, so if you see this picture, you have a little bit of a better idea of what's going on here. Anyway, when I first saw this picture, I said, man, this is really complicated. But then I went, oh no, it's not that bad. You know, when you see that protein complex unwraps that, well, okay. So this is a word for word, if you want to look at it later, word for word what she just narrated. Okay, so if you want to read it later, you can. The digital information, now underneath this is the math on the chances of that happening by accident. Now, if you saw, you go to the beach and you see John Loves Mary on the beach, would you say the turtle looked like he walked around and look what he wrote? No, you would say somebody wrote that, right? Even if somebody put H-I, hi, you'd say, well, intelligence did that. So is this, looking at that video, do you think that that is possibly some idea that there must have been some intelligence that designed this? Well, I don't know how you would avoid that. I don't know. That's more complex than a car. Okay? An assembly line for a car. Okay. Digital information found in DNA directs protein synthesis or protein construction. The average proteins have 300 to 400 linked amino acids, taking a very modest length of protein, 150 linked amino acids as an example. There are 20 possible amino acids at each link site, and not every amino acid combination is functional. So you might have the 1 out of 20, 1 out of 20, 1 out of 20, and it's put together randomly. It might not even function as a protein. It could just be gibberish. It's kind of like the alphabet. You've got 26 letters. You could put a bunch of letters together, and it might not make any sense in any language. So, okay. Scientists have calculated the possibility of getting a functional protein by chance. The probability, and it's not even saying it's the right protein that's going to go to the right place to do the right job. The probability of getting a short functional protein, 150 amino acids long by chance alone, is 1 in 10 to the 74th power. Now, the 10 to the 74th power is the 1 out of 20, 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 150 times. That's what that is. Now, in between each one of these amino acids, there has to be a bond in between the two to link them together. It's called a peptide bond. You can have a non-peptide bond and a peptide bond. The chances of it being a peptide bond is 1 in 10 to the 45th power. Okay, because it's 1 out of 149. It's 149 places where you get a 1 out of 2. It comes out to 10 to the 45th. And also they have to be left-handed isomers. That's another thing they have to be so that they will fold correctly into a protein. So in calculating, doing the math, it's 1 in 10 to the 164 power. There's not that many atoms in the universe. Okay, the number is so ridiculous, you say, there's no way this would happen by chance. To me, the amazing thing about that, and sorry if we kind of spent a lot of time on this, but I'm kind of excited about this fish noise. But, because people can't refute this, I think it's crazy. But,
yes, they can. I told a guy about this one time. I said, well, it happened, Bubba. You can tell. Said Bubba, so we can tell where his name was.
Yeah, is your car designed? Nah,
Yeah,
it happened, Bubba. Yeah. Anyways, so 1 in 10 to the 164th power. Now, that's not even counting on what's delivering these proteins, these amino acids to the location and putting them in place. This is just the arrangement. To me, that's even harder because it's going to be put in exactly the right place. Something's going to bring it there and put it there. That's like saying, okay, I've got 3 letters and it's R-O-Y. I want to spell my name. Okay, what's the chances I'm going to spell my name? 1 out of 3, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 3. Okay, 1 out of 3. What's that? First one I'm going to get is 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3 squared. 1 out of 3 cubed. Okay, so
To spell your name?
yeah, R-O-Y. If I had
No,
3
1 out of
letters,
26
if I had 3
right?
letters,
If there was only 3.
if I had 3 letters, but that's the arrangement of the letters. If I drop them on the floor, what's the chance it's going to spell my name? Very unlikely. The letters are going to be, the odds are much higher. So it's the same thing with this. They have to be delivered and put in the right place. Okay. Bill Gates stated human DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced we've ever created. You think it makes sense to conclude that computer programs as complex as they can be would happen by chance? No. Richard Dawkins says biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. What's the key word in there, you think? Biology is a study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. Yeah, appearance. Well, they have an appearance of that, but he's an atheist, and he's written a bunch of books and made a lot of money selling books, God Delusion, and all that different books. Appearance but not design. Why do you think someone would say that someone has the appearance of being designed for purpose, but it was not designed for purpose? After viewing the above information, does it make sense to believe our cells function by chance? I don't think so. Okay. Everybody okay? Good. All right. All right, we're going to look at now, is the Bible historically accurate? Okay. Archaeological science. Now, archaeology is a science, okay? Also known as archaeometry, consists of the application of scientific techniques to the analysis of archaeological materials. Can we investigate the accuracy of biblical accounts and make the case that the Bible is historically reliable through archaeology? Exploring the historical accuracy of the Bible through archaeological discoveries made in the last 200 years. This is another thing. These archaeological discoveries have been made in the last 200 years. It's like the scientific things are like from the last 60 years. The DNA and all these things. We should shut this thing off so we don't burn it out. One more time. Okay. All right, so I used to go to a free thinkers group at Brown University, and you would talk about the Bible, and I was the old guy there. One of the kids actually asked, "Are you a professor here?" And the other kid laughed and said, "No, he's not." They didn't even know me, he just said it. That's okay. So I was fine with that. So he said, "They don't love thy word, not shall offend them." Idiot. So one of the guys said to me, there's no evidence at all of the Israelites were in Egypt and being conquered in Egypt and how Moses and the Ten Commandments and all that. That's just a story in the Bible. That's not even really true. There's no evidence of that. Well, I didn't know what to say, so we talked about something else. But so I didn't know what this shows right here. Critics state that the Israelites were never in Egypt in direct conflict with the biblical account. In 1966, a distinctively Israelite architectural horseshoe style of housing was discovered in Goshen. This housing is believed to have been constructed in Egypt at the time when Joseph lived in Egypt. So there was housing in Egypt that archaeologists have found what is distinctively Israelite type housing. Okay, that's one reason to believe that they were there. The Brooklyn Papyrus was acquired in the late 19th century, and I have an image of that, but it's not here, by Charles Wilbur. It included a list of 77 slaves' names, 30 of which were Northwest Semitic, including many Hebrew names. Here were found distinctive Hebrew names in Egyptian households. Okay, I guess there might have been some Israelites in Egypt during this period. Okay, the Ebla tablets. Scholars said that Moses couldn't have written the first 5 books of the Bible because the art of writing was virtually unknown. Then they discovered the Ebla tablets in Syria, and the tablets had names like Sodom and a bunch of cities that people said that didn't exist, but they found that these names were on the city, which isn't down here. But they were written about 1,000 years before Moses. Okay, I guess they could have been writing back then. Sennacherib, also known as Taylor's Prison. This is just amazing, this thing. See this thing over on the right over here? This is like the newspaper of the day, okay? The book of the day. They found 3 of these. They were the same, and it had an account of Sennacherib's fighting with Israel, the Assyrian king Sennacherib. And he talks about how he went in and conquered 46 of his strong walled towns, leveling them with battering rams and bringing up siege rams. And the biblical account in 2 Kings 18:13 says King Sennacherib of Assyria came up against the fortified cities of Judah and seized them. So this account found by archaeology, when you could say, somebody might say, yeah, this is a really nice story there in the Bible about how this king, whoever his name was, came in and went against Israel. Well, then they found that archaeologists found this, and they said, well, I guess this really did happen. Look at this. But as Stephen Meyer said when he does this series, he said a lot of these kings were subject to bragging a lot. And so if they get defeated, they didn't always mention it. So he never went, if you remember the story, he never made it into Jerusalem because Hezekiah prayed, and Isaiah would happen to be alive at the time. He's a pretty good guy to have around. And he prayed to God, and God told him, listen, don't worry about it. He's not going to make it in the city. And that's one of the angels of the Lord killed Sennacherib's soldiers at that point. So, but this Sennacherib's prison, which there were 3 of them found again, it was actually found by Taylor, so they call it Sennacherib's prison and Taylor's prison. It was found in 1830, and they've translated it, and they know what it means historically, and it's just amazing when they find these things that line up right with the biblical accounts. It's just incredible. Cyrus' cylinder in the Bible concur. Jeremiah 29 predicted that Cyrus would allow Jewish people to return to their homeland. 2 Chronicles and Ezra recorded the account of them returning. Cyrus' cylinder, an account by Cyrus, the king of Persia, discovered in the ruins of Babylon and Mesopotamia in 1879. So some of these things were found in the 1800s, not only the 1900s or even now, because most things have been discovered now. From the sacred centers of the other side of Tigris, whose sanctuaries had been abandoned for a long time, I returned the images of gods who resided there to their places and let them dwell in eternal abodes. I gathered all our inhabitants and returned them to their dwellings. This is what Cyrus did. So he recorded what the Bible says too, that he did that. That's a great thing too, that he did that. You know, at that point, see, man, when God really impressed upon his heart. In the house of David inscription, one of the most beloved characters in the Bible is King David. Scripture says that he was a man after God's own heart, and as we know a lot about him, he was revered as the greatest of all the Israelite kings, and the Messianic covenant is established through his lineage. Critics question the existence of the King David. In the summer of 1993, so that's 21 years ago, an archaeologist made what has been labeled as a phenomenal and stunning discovery. Dr. Abram Byron and his team were excavating a site labeled Tel Dan, and they found a stela, what's called a stela, which had the letters that 2 lines that include the phrases "the King of Israel" and "House of David." This was the first reference to King David found outside the Bible. So when they say, "Oh, gee, we're not sure if there's a King David that existed," and then they find these stone stelas, there were actually 2 of these that had King David's name on them. And you say, "Oh, I guess there was a King David." A lot of different. The critics have to keep reassessing things that they've said and the criticisms of the Bible. All of us have probably heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls. 1947, a shepherd stumbled upon what is now known to be one of the most important archaeological discoveries of religious texts in the Western world. The Dead Sea Scrolls found 11 caves are comprised of more than 800 documents made of animal skin, papyrus, and forged copper. They were found in the remote site, West Bank, known as Qumran. Okay, and we know that in that at least parts of every book in the Bible except Esther has been found, and many of us know the Isaiah 53 chapter, it's Messianic, where it says he was led like a lamb to the slaughter, didn't open his mouth. 6 or 7 times it said that all our iniquities, our sins would be placed upon him. And well, they compared what was used for the King James Version of the Bible was from what's called the Masoretic text, which were from 900 AD. And the copy of Isaiah, which they had a full copy of Isaiah chapter 53, was from 100 BC. So the time period is how long? From 100 BC to 900 AD. 1,000 years. And they compared them. They compared the complete chapter of Isaiah 53. It's not that short of a chapter. It's a pretty good chapter. They found there was one word, and the word was light. And it was like, "you shall see," or "you shall see the light." It didn't change the meaning at all. There was punctuation and spelling. There were some spelling differences and punctuation differences. But as far as the rest of the content of that chapter, there was really no difference. So you just see, this comparison of manuscripts that's just an example of what they found and compared. This comparison of manuscripts over a period of 1,000 years made evident the amazing veracity that scribes exhibited in preserving the integrity of what is known as God's Word. Amazing, huh? It's just amazing stuff. There are many Hebrew prophecies that have already been fulfilled. About 150 years before Cyrus, who we just read about, Cyrus' cylinder, king of Persia, was born. Isaiah predicted his birth, gave his name, and told that he would release the Jews from captivity. Isaiah 44:28. Josiah, one of Judah's kings, was named 300 years before he was born. Only God could have revealed these facts, a clear indication of the supernatural nature of the Bible. Now this is known as John Ryland's manuscript. We look at this manuscript because not only is there good evidence in archaeology for the Old Testament, which is what we've been looking at right there, but also for the New Testament. And obviously, if you talk to, we're talking about apologetics here, so these are different reasons why we know things are true. If you're talking to a person who's Jewish, I wouldn't call it the Old Testament. They don't really like that. They usually call it the Hebrew Bible. That's what I call it. Some people call it the Torah, but I call it the Hebrew Bible. Okay, but this is known as the oldest piece of the New Testament, and they found another one that they think might be older than this, but it hasn't been documented for sure that it is. This is from AD 125, and this is from John. It's kind of interesting to me, John 18, where it says that it's that verse that says, "Whoever is of the truth hears my voice," and that's, as we just went over that, what is truth? Pilate said to Jesus, "What is truth?" I had an ossuary. This is they found an ossuary, which is a bone box from a gravesite. They found a heel with a nail through it. Apparently they couldn't get the nail out. So it kind of makes it evident that this man, whoever he was crucified. And then there's a rule that, as a general rule of records in history, if intricate details are included in an account, it should be virtually impossible to know unless present at the time or taken from sources from the time spoken of. It must have come from that time. That first one's a little cumbersome. It talks about, call somebody a proconsul, or if you call them legate. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But bottom line is, you can read that if you like on your own. Luke named them exactly correctly. Okay? And then there's some things that have been found. These pictures in the bottom here, the temple warning inscription. There was a temple warning inscription found in 1871 in Jerusalem. No Gentile might enter beyond the dividing wall into the court around the holy place. If you remember the story with Paul, who was accused of bringing an unbeliever in that area. So that made the case that this was correct. And so different the Bema seat was found. Many of the places in the bottom of the page, many of the places associated with the life of Jesus that have been substantiated by archaeology. This includes the pool of Siloam, the pool of Bethsaida, Jacob 12, Bethlehem, Nazareth, Capernaum, Cana, Horatio. This is the plate residence of Pilate in Jerusalem. There have been over 25,000 ancient artifacts discovered relating to the Bible. Not one of these amazing discoveries has controverted the Bible. What do you think, huh? Sir William Ramsay, who's regarded as one of the greatest archaeologists to ever live, began his excavations. And a lot of these people started doing these things because they wanted to prove the Bible wrong. Like Josh McDowell said, I wanted to prove that my wife was crazy and Christianity is not true. Lee Strobel, same thing. They wanted to prove that Jesus isn't who he said he was and his wife is out of her mind. What ends up happening to these guys? I guess it's true. So the same thing with Sir William Ramsay, one of the greatest archaeologists to live. Found that Luke, he said, Luke's kind of a sloppy history writer. I don't think he's that good. I'm going to find out, get the details, and show that he's not really accurate. Well, guess what? He's unsurpassed in his respect to his trustworthiness. And actually, a man named Colin Hemmer wrote a book. It's a thick book, and it's kind of tough reading. But Dr. Norman Geisler said that he believes this is one of the most substantial books, the most important books written in the last 50 years, because he looks at the history, Hellenistic history, and how Luke recorded things exactly the way they were supposed to be. It was just an amazing story. So, evidence for early composition of the New Testament. Now, why would it be good if the New Testament was written earlier, or closer to when it really happened? I mean, if I wrote a history book right, what's that?
Accuracy.
Yeah, accuracy. Right. If I wrote a history of George Washington's life right now, and I didn't cite sources that were alive at the time, how good would it be? Probably not that good. You know. So the closer, the better. So these are things you can look at later if you want. The New Testament's been preserved more in ancient manuscripts than any document in ancient history. Daniel Wallace has recently written, in Greek alone, there are over 5,600 manuscripts today, together about 20,000 handwritten manuscripts of the New Testament in various languages. New discoveries are being made and more added to the list. Even if someone could destroy all those manuscripts, the New Testament could be entirely reconstructed into the 1 million quotations by the early church fathers. That's amazing. So they say, you got rid of, I think there's like 2 or 3 verses they said they wouldn't find because they weren't perfect. Somebody don't have a better number on that. I think it was very small. It might have been one chapter. 3rd John or something like that they wouldn't have. Pretty much the rest of the Bible they could find from the quotations from the early church fathers. So in comparison, you see the different copies of things. When people say, well, the Bible, we're not sure if it's accurate, but you say, well, listen, there's 5,600. There's more than that now. There's 5,700. There may be more because they're finding them. Then, and as you probably know, some of these, they went to monastery. Where these monks were burning these ancient scrolls to start their fire. The guy went in. He was looking for these. He went looking for these manuscripts in this area, and he'd been searching. He couldn't find anything. I don't know if he went back. I can't remember exactly what the story was. But what he found was these guys. He went in and found that they were burning him, so he ended up getting them. In any case, people wouldn't say that Socrates didn't say anything, or Plato. These different people, and you see like at the bottom of that section there, it says Plato's works on Socrates were written between 427 and 437 BC. The earliest copy of his manuscript is from 900 AD. 7 copies of the ancient manuscript remain in existence today, and it can be comparatively studied. A comparison to what there is of sources like Alexander the Great and different history of let's say Caesar, these different people. You say this, the Bible. The copies of the Bible, it's just ridiculous. It's kind of like saying that cells happened by accident. The Bible, it's almost embarrassing to see how many copies we have of the Bible in comparison to any other ancient document. Okay? And how far can we go back? I ran into a guy at the car auction in Dayton. I gave him $1 million bill, and I said, it talks about in the back of $1 million question, where you're going to go when you die. He says, oh man, I'm very spiritual. I said, really? And I believe in reincarnation 100%. That's what he says to me. I believe in reincarnation 100%. And he says, and I've healed people, and he's into Reiki and whatever. For his 5 minutes, he let me talk to one. But anyways, it came to the point where he said, when Constantine met with the group there, he said, they changed a lot of the Bible. I said, really? Well, you do know we have copies of the Bible from the 100s and 200s. Previous to that, so they can change it all they want. We've got copies from before that. Oh, you do? I said, yeah, there are copies. There are archaeological discoveries. We have copies from before that. Oh, so, all right. So, and he just said one thing after another that he had heard, like Mary and Joseph and Mary were vegetarians. He said they were vegetarians. I said, have you ever heard of the Passover lamb? He says, no. I said, yeah, well, during Passover. As far as I know, they eat Passover lamb. He said, gee, I guess I got that information. We had a pretty good talk anyways. So, but it's good if we know a couple things, and we can say these things to somebody, as we all know this. Okay, supernatural. Okay, so first of all, the first point here is we're trying to prove that there is a God, okay? Intelligent design. All right, and you look at what happens inside a cell, you look at our universe, it came from somewhere, and we've talked about this in the True You series. You say, okay, there's some concepts that aren't easy. You say, okay, can something come out of nothing? Can something come out of nothing? Well, can nothing cause something? No, I don't think so. Nothing can cause nothing, because it doesn't exist. But can something cause something out of nothing? I guess so. I guess it can. The bottom line is, there's some things that we're going to have to say, you know what, this is tough for me to wrap my brain around, but I know it's true. Like, I've heard somebody say this, and I thought it was extremely honest, and I liked it. I can't remember who it was. It was like Josh McConnell, one of those guys. Said, you know what, either Jesus is God or the Bible doesn't make any sense. I thought that was a good, honest statement to make. But we know the Bible makes sense, so Jesus is God. And you say, okay, all right, who created God? Who caused God? Okay, you say everything that came into existence is caused. Okay, everything that came into existence is caused. Who caused God? God didn't come into existence. He's always been here. He's eternal. That's not that easy of a concept for me to wrap my mind around. I don't know about you guys. Say God is eternal. He's been here forever. I can. The concept of saying we started at a certain point, we're born at a certain point, we're going to be alive forever. Yeah, okay, I can handle that. But to say I'm eternal, God is eternal, that He's always been here, that's a tough one. But you know what? Something's going to be here forever, because nothing causes nothing. Something has to be. Either that's true or we don't make any sense at all. Nothing makes any sense. That has to be true. Just like Jesus is God, just like different concepts that we say, you know what? The Bible's true. I know the Bible's true. Jesus is who He says He is. So, and the answer to that, when they say, well, don't you say that everything that comes into being is caused? Well, God never came into being. It was eternal. What's the alternative to that? The alternative to that is this caused the earth. That caused the thing that caused the earth. That thought caused the thing that caused the thing that caused the earth. That caused the thing, like they say, turtle on the back of a turtle, on the back of a turtle, on the back of a turtle, forever. So you know what? Something has to be here forever. So, anyways, there are 3 sets of miracles that are directly associated with the life of Jesus Christ. 100 prophecies made, 400. Now, there's different numbers on that. Some people say 300, which that could be right. My guess is that there's a lot more prophecies in the Bible that we don't even know about, that God will tell us about later on, if that's what He does with us. But we know that there's at least 100 prophecies or predictions about Jesus' life that were made 500 to 1400 years before His birth, including predictions about His birthplace, the price of His betrayal, His riding to Jerusalem on a donkey, He paid the price for our sins, etc. The miracles He performed when He lived on this earth, including raising people from the dead, expelling demons. Jesus was crucified, raised from the dead, and then appeared to 500 people. Even some of the toughest critics of the Bible credit Paul's letter, 1 Corinthians, that it's accurate and early account of the facts that they have. There's no other belief system that has, or religion that has this type of supernatural evidence. And that's just a summary of saying, okay, there is a God, there's an intelligent designer, right? We know there is. Something put us together, something built my car, something built these chairs. We're a lot more complex than any of these things. And incidentally, Jim Silvera said, we've used this a lot. And excuse me for repeating myself again, but in the prison, there's a table up in front. And I'll say to the guys, I'll say, okay, if you haven't been through this before, let's say, I got a question for you. You say, you might ask me, because anybody can come to this, you say, you ever seen God? You ever talked to God? You ever heard from God? I say, you see that table? It's stained on the top, it's got white legs. They say, you ever see the builder? You ever talked to the builder? You ever heard from the builder? No, but you know there's a builder. Why? Well, look at it. It's got metal screws in there holding the legs on. It's designed. Unquestionably. I mean, the legs are white and the top is stained. That wouldn't happen by accident. You say, what's more complex, my body or that table? Well, your body, of course. But Jim Silvera said, I didn't want to use that. He won't mind these things. Because he says, somebody may say to me, but you're alive. You can change. The table's dead. It can't change. You know what we say to that? You know what happens for me to come to life? That microbiology stuff. That's how life originated. There's no way that happens by accident. That's far more complex than tables or whatever. So it's just, okay, first it has to come to life. Yeah, that's even worse. So in any case. Additional evidence for Jesus' life from non-Christian ancient sources. Okay, this is a chart that I plagiarized from Dr. Geisel's book. It's different historians, non-Christian historians, within 150 years of Jesus' life, because some people still will say, oh, I don't even think Jesus was alive. Okay, well, guess what? Tacitus, Suetonius, Josephus, it's unanimous on the left column here. All these historians from back then say that Jesus was alive. Okay, and Bart Ehrman, who's probably the biggest critic of the Bible today, debates with Christians, says anybody that says that Jesus wasn't alive is a good historian. Okay, so, and then you look over here and you say, okay, he was worshipped, he had disciples, he was a teacher, he was crucified, the tomb was empty, blah blah. So there's different. That's historians, non-Christian historians. Then on the back of that, and I think probably maybe we'll cover some of this next week. I don't know. Talking about world religions and cults, or just going to be cults, I'm not sure. But world religions and cults. Bart Ehrman, a well-known non-Christian textual critic of the Bible, has documented there are 11 non-Christian sources that verify Jesus was crucified. Could he be crucified if he wasn't alive? Or he didn't exist? That would be very difficult. Okay. So these are, again, he says 11, and he's like the biggest critic that I know of the Bible. Again, that will debate people. But you know what the big difference with Islam and Christianity, one of the biggest differences? I mean, there's more than one big difference, but one of the biggest differences. Twice in the Quran it says that Jesus was born of a virgin. Okay? And sorry if we're going to the next week a little bit of this for a minute. Twice it says he was born of a virgin. He said he healed the sick, raised the dead, healed lepers, did miracles, even when he was a baby. But they said he wasn't crucified. They faked it. Okay? That's what they say. They faked it. Because if they say he was born of a virgin, died on the cross, rose from the dead, well, all these different things, it's pretty much like Christianity, you know? So if it's going to be different, it's going to be different somewhere. They say he faked it. It was somebody else. Well, guess what? We'll probably make the case for that.
It's not going to fake it or be born of a virgin.
Yeah, right. Right, true. Good point. Good point. So in any case, these are historians that said he was crucified, okay? Now, evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. To me, the biggest thing, we want to end right at 9 o'clock here. The biggest thing for me is that the disciples' lives. That's just amazing how they turned around. They ran like cowards when Jesus was crucified, but then afterwards they would die. They would die for the story. They wouldn't give up the story. They would not recant on the fact that Jesus died for their sins and he was the Messiah. So that's okay. And then at the bottom here, Isaiah 41, 22, 23 on page bottom of page 6 here. Let them bring them and let's tell us what is to happen. Tell us the former things, what they are, that we may consider them, that we may know their outcome, and declare the things to come. Tell us what may come hereafter, that we may know that you are gods. Do good and do harm, that we may be dismayed and terrified. What's God saying there in that verse? He's saying, if you're a God, prophesy. Tell what's going to happen in the future, because that's how you're going to tell if you're God or not. Okay? Then we have a list of predictions that Jesus fulfilled. And Jesus taught, he said, you search the scriptures for them, and then you think you have eternal life. They testify of me. Peter used that. Paul used that. This, like 2 or 3 days, I just want to point out real quick. We have like 2 minutes left. As we know, where was Jesus born? Bethlehem, of course, right? Micah 5:2. And up at the top here, it says when Micah was written in the 700s, so 700 years before Jesus was born. How do we know it's Jesus in that? How do we know that it's got something to do with him in that verse? Do you remember why? You, O Bethlehem Ephrathah. What I've been taught too, there were 2 different Bethlehems, that's why they specified Ephrathah. You from eternity will come from Bethlehem. You from eternity? Who's from eternity? God. Okay? We know that's not us. Okay? He should be called Emmanuel in Isaiah 7:14. God with us. Okay. All right, and then came into Jerusalem on a donkey. The betrayer ate the bread. Psalm 41, verse 9. One that's totally amazing to me is number 21, the date of entrance into Jerusalem, when you couple Daniel 9, 25, 26 with Nehemiah at the time of reconstruction of Jerusalem. You can predict the time that Jesus would go in his triumphant entry into Jerusalem. It's just incredible. And I've tried to do it. I was a math major. Not that I know anything, but I was a math major. And so I tried to figure out the exact date to make sure it was the right date. But what I found out was the calendars back then were so arbitrary. They didn't come up with a good system in counting their calendars till like AD 300. It's tough to tell exactly what day the date is. There's different theories on that. And I don't know what's the best one. Maybe somebody knows, but I don't know. But the bottom line to me was that it was going to happen before Jerusalem, the temple was thrown down, thrown down. And it's right in a month that Jesus was alive going into Jerusalem. So who else is going to be? Like Michael Brown says, if it's not Jesus, it's not anybody. It's got to be him. Okay? And then there's some stuff on the back here. Just about personal testimony. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope it was okay. I hope it was okay with everybody. All right? Father, thank you for this night. Thank you that you've given us evidence that you are unquestionably the God who made things. The God of the Bible is the God, the one and only God. As the Bible says, you are God and there is no other. And we know that Jesus is God unquestionably. He was worshipped. It was prophesied that he was Emmanuel. There's so much evidence he was omniscient. He was omnipresent. He was everywhere. Just so much evidence that Jesus is God. And Father, we'll address that next week when we address cults. But we thank you so much that you've given us the evidence. And to me, more evidence today than ever. Just through science, through archaeology, we just our universe now and our world is full of evidence that you are who you say you are. And but we know that you give grace to the humble. And we thank you that by your grace we were humble enough to trust Jesus Christ as our Savior. And we thank you for Alan's leadership in this, directing this, and making this a fruitful time. We thank you for the attendees tonight. We hope this is a fruitful time for them. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. One more thing.